Hi, I'm Jim Marn. I'm a Senior Content Specialist here at Kaplan Schw, and I'd like to welcome you to this masterclass on portfolio management. Specifically today, we're going to take a look at the basics of portfolio planning and construction. And I want to zero in on that word basics. You probably won't find this session very difficult. Maybe take a handful of notes, especially when we look at our examples, and also give yourself a little refresher by taking a look at the Schw notes. And you should be good to go for your CFA Level 1 exam. So as always, what do you need to zero in on? What do you need to pass your CFA Level 1 exam? What should you focus your attention and your studies and your practice on? Well, we're going to take a look at our investment policy statement in a little more detail. We did mention this in a prior session. Then we're going to look at risk and return objectives. We're going to talk about absolute and relative risk and the ability and willingness to take risk. And we'll give you a couple examples there to hopefully make that real clear for you. And then we're going to continue our discussion and look at investment constraints, and that's pretty much giving you a list, and that shouldn't be that difficult. And that would be such things as, say, liquidity needs, time horizons, and so on. And then we have all that information there, and hopefully we can come up with a real sound asset allocation decision for our client. Maybe we're going to use strategic asset allocation or tactical asset allocation, or maybe a combination of the two, as we're going to see in an example for you, using core and satellite approach to asset allocation. And along the way, we might want to incorporate some environmental, social, or corporate governance considerations when we're making portfolio decisions, or in other words, ESG. And we'll wrap up with that as we finish today's session. So let's go ahead and dive right into our investment policy statement, our components, and they're pretty straightforward. You're going to see a test question, maybe be around what you'd find in an investment policy statement, or maybe the definition of one of these particular terms. But as you're building your investment policy statement, you might be asking yourself, what are some of the sound components? What should I be focusing in on as, say, the wrapper, or looking at building all this information around? Well, I've got three for you. First of all, we want to keep things realistic. We do not want to be setting return objectives, say 20% a year for the next 12 years. That might not be so realistic, especially with no risk. So you can see we want to keep our expectations and also our goals realistic. That'd be really important. Then we want to have a long-term perspective. And that's really, say, the key with an investment policy statement. It's once again zeroing in. It's keeping ourselves focused. And then lastly, it provides clarity. So we want to keep those, say, three things in mind as you are developing an IPS for a client, say the key attributes, if you will. So first of all, what are going to be some of the components? Well, you know, the description of the client, and that'll be the client's circumstances, situation, and investment objectives. I'm going to go ahead and put objectives here. That'll obviously be very important. What are we trying to accomplish here? The statement of purpose of our IPS, that'll be obviously dovetailing our first one here with our objectives. Then the statement of duties and responsibilities. Who's going to do what, if you will? The investment manager, the custodian of assets, and the client. So I can put who does what. How are we going to split those responsibilities, say, between the client and any advisors? Then we're going to take a look at procedures to update the IPS. As we're going to see over time, if you will, the allocation of assets might get a little bit out of whack. So how are we going to go about updating the IPS, say either with an asset allocation update, or if something changes in our client circumstances, if you will. So how are we going to respond to different situations and circumstances? So update, say, and respond. All right, then we're going to look at investment objectives. Very clear. We touched on that briefly already. And those are derived from our communications with our client. That may be, sir, using leading questions and discussions to really get them, say, zeroed in on those objectives for their portfolio and their needs and their goals and their wants, what they would like to accomplish by accumulating wealth, if you will. Then, of course, we want to wrap that around with constraints that our client might have. And we got to consider those in developing their plan. And we're going to talk about them in detail and just coming up in just a moment. Then we're also going to have investment guidelines, how that policy is going to be executed, what kind of asset types are we going to use. And I'm